during the first 7 years of my life was that I live in a shack with 4 stilts above ground with no running water, no electricity, going to bed hungry every night. Many, many fond memories. Not great today, but I had many, many fond memories of eating mice, eating bugs, and eating crickets and grasshoppers and eating roots and fruits that you could pick from the nearby forest, whatnot, that you could find just to make sure that you had something to eat and had something in your stomach so you don't have to cry yourself to bed hungry. Welcome to Love, Listings, and Legacy, where love, community, and building a lasting impact meet. We are Mony and Sophie Mao, a husband and wife real estate team, sharing our perspectives on life, real estate, and philanthropy, our stories about resilience and service. Join us each week as we share our journey of life, business, and giving back, all while building a legacy for our family and community. This is Love, Listings, and Legacy, where hearts, homes, and philanthropy come together. Let's get started.
All right. So, hi. How do you feel about finally getting our podcast going?
I am excited about us starting this project together. And the exciting thing is that we don't know what to come and where this is going to take us. But hopefully it is inspiring to others, and we get to have this type of conversation on a regular basis and meet some incredible people along the way, just like running for a campaign.
All right. So I think what we'll go ahead and doing as we're warming up is Love, Listings, and Legacy, our new podcast, where we are going to share our story of resilience, real estate, and building a legacy of service. So I'm Sophie Mao, and
I'm Mony Nop. Welcome to Love, Listings, and Legacy.
Great. So today we're going to dive into where it all started and just our journey from Cambodia to America and how it shaped our path and where we are today. Right, honey? So I think before we get started and go back in time, why don't you introduce yourselves to our audience or like folks who don't know who we are and maybe share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Mony Nop. I'm a father of 2 boys, 27 and 29 today. Happy birthday, Andrew. Today's his 29th birthday. And a grandfather of a 5-year-old. I lived here in Livermore for the last 29 years. Served 17 years as a Livermore police officer here. And today I consider myself a community leader. I've done a lot of different things in the community, including being a part of many, many nonprofits. So I'm really, really proud of that and just love being here in the community.
No, that's great. That's
great.
And
you?
Well, I think I always say I'm married to Mony, not money.
Sorry.
I know I should have checked the spelling on that. But I guess for me, I grew up in Stockton, California, and I consider myself a 1.5er, so 1.5 generation Cambodian-American, and grew up in the Central Valley, and then found my way to San Francisco, and then eventually to Southeast Asia for my career, and spent many years in corporate America. I'd say about 15 years. I started as a teenager. Just kidding.
She is young.
I know. I try, but So I guess after getting married to you, Livermore became home, and then now I'm very active in the community because I feel like we'll be married almost 3 years, and now being here in Livermore, I feel like it's time for me to place my mark and contribute and give back and have somewhat of an impact. So aside from helping run operations for Mony Nop real estate team here in Livermore, I serve on the board of the Tri-Valley Haven, which is a nonprofit here for the past 47 years, advocating and supporting survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, as well as now supporting some of our unhoused families, and then serving on the board of a nonprofit in Siem Reap, Cambodia, where the work is in Siem Reap, Cambodia, called Caring for Cambodia. So that's been really fun, and being, of course, stepmom to Andrew and Ryan, and step-grandma to Caden. And just being an auntie, and being a daughter and a friend, and it's good. Yeah.
It's a lot, and we obviously have a lot to share with a lot of people, but I'm proud that we met about 3.5 years ago, been married now a little bit over 2 years, and I'm proud to have you here in the community. I think that one of the things that I just love about our journey is that, we get to do a lot of different things together, including serving on the board for Caring for Cambodia, for example, and to be part of this community together. I think that that's where we have the most fun, and that's where it's been the most engaging. And the fact that we're able to help people along the way, no matter how big or small, is such an honor. So I think that it's been great.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, thank you so much. And I'm just really excited to launch our Love Listings and Legacy podcast, honey. I know it's something we've been talking about, and then sometimes when you have an idea and then it's just executing and getting the idea to come to life. And so maybe you could share with our audience really quickly, getting the podcast going. What do you hope to accomplish, or maybe how do you see our podcast helping others?
Well, when I think about, first of all, you came up with the name, Love, Listings, and Legacy. I thought it was really, really good, the 3 L's, right? But when I think about it, I think about family, from where we are now to where I was, the lack of family, and to building a family, and, growing up in a broken household, and to where we are now. I think it's incredible. So, and then we get to share all that, and then plus, how we came about and how we met and how we became together. And now, I've been doing real estate for 18 years, and I've sold over 400 homes, and then it's been an honor to serve so many clients in this community. But to be able to share that wealth of information, I believe, to share with people how to buy a home, how to sell a home, how to maximize the price, how to get top dollars, how to why it matters to have a home. I think all those topics are going to come up that we're going to be able to share. And then lastly, how we should live our life. It's about our legacy. What should we do? How do we live a meaningful and purpose life? It's really, really important that we really, really think about it. Also thinking about the exit plan. What does that look like? Part of your legacy as well, right? So that's what Love, Listings, and Legacy is all about. So there's going to be many, many aspects of it. And then the best part is that we will be talking to others as well who've gone through the same similar journeys and hear their story, and hoping that all of us, when we come together, that we can inspire others, lift each other up, and do more and give more and be more together. That's what it's all about.
So as we're starting to plan our podcast endeavor, obviously, we wanted to make sure that it was intentional. I think for me, one of the things I've learned now in my, 40-something years is that we have a limited amount of time, and that anything that we do and anything we put our heart to, it has to be intentional, right, honey? And so that's something that you and I always talked about. So I think for me, starting this podcast means being able to share our journey, our lessons learned, as well as just like advice, right, for those who are possibly going through a phase in life that may be challenging, or perhaps, just looking for some stories to get inspired. And then lastly, just looking for some solid practical advice, whether that's real estate, whether that's nonprofit work, whether that's just family. So I think for me, it's about serving. I think that when you share your stories and your experiences, you are serving others in a way, because you never know, someone might really just need to hear what you have to say that day. So I'm really excited to get started, and we have an amazing team to kind of, get us started. Also, you brought up being able to interview and invite other guests on our show. I think that's going to be so important, because we want to be able to provide a platform for those who are doing exceptional work in the community, and being able to uplift them and share their work, I think is really valuable. Absolutely.
I really like the word that you use, serving. It is I look at my whole life, even before I met you, is that it's always been about serving, about how do, you take what you have or what you've learned, and how do you help others in the process as well, is helping to really raise the tides of the community, and that we could all do it better together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we've got a lot to cover in just our podcast journey, and I think let's just take it step by step, right?
Absolutely.
And obviously there's going to be different topics and different episodes. So my hope is that everyone takes a nugget of wisdom For me, it's an honor and it's a privilege when someone actually will dive into our podcast because that means they're giving us 45
Well,
minutes.
thanks in advance.
Yeah,
We
thank
hope
you
that you'll be
guys.
able to join us and hear our stories and what we've done, all the lessons we've learned, all the obstacles we had to go through. Really, a mountain we had to climb in order to be where we are to now. So hopefully we'll be able to share a lot of those
Yeah.
lessons.
Yeah, it'll be a great experience. So, one of the things that I think is really valuable, and usually because I'm such a podcast junkie, I always like to know, when I'm inviting someone into my head, meaning I'm listening to them, whether I'm driving or going on a walk or whether I'm doing chores, I always like to know a little bit about my podcast host. So, wouldn't you say that's probably a good place to start? Maybe we could start kind of like maybe like our journey, maybe at least just to kind of get things going.
Okay?
Okay. Yeah. So, when you think about where we're from, obviously, our ancestry goes all the way back to the Kingdom of Cambodia. And so we're Cambodian-Americans. And so maybe you could help set the scene a little bit and maybe just describe your life in Cambodia or maybe what you remember in Cambodia as a young Mony.
Well, first of all, I'm very, very proud to be a Cambodian American. My life began very humbly. I was born right into the conflict in Cambodia between the Khmer Rouge and the Pol Pot regime. So, in fact, as what I was told to me by my parents was that at the age of 7 days old, my mother and I had to be taken away by a helicopter, military helicopter, from our village to another part of Cambodia to make sure that we survived the conflict because they were about to bomb where we lived. And sure enough, after we left, they bombed it. So my father had to follow us on by walking and met us at the Battambang region. Province, and that's how we came back as a family. But that's as early as that was told to me at the 7 days old. And many other memories that I could think of when I was, during the first 7 years of my life was that I live in a shack with 4 stilts above ground with no running water, no electricity, and going to bed hungry every night. So, and I have many fond memories, although, not great today, but I had many fond memories of eating mice, eating bugs, and eating crickets and grasshoppers, and eating roots and fruits that you could pick from the nearby forest, whatnot, that you could find just to make sure that you had something to eat and had something in your stomach, so you don't have to cry yourself to bed hungry. So those are my many memories. And I remember even at the age of 5 years old, sitting in a mass tent on dirt floor, clenching onto a bowl and a spoon, sitting in a circle with a bunch of boys and girls at my age, waiting for an adult to put some food into the middle of the circle so we could devour it. And sure enough, after a little bit of waiting, when the food got put down into the middle of the circle, we devoured it in second. And the second time goes around, as the food was running out, I decided that I was so hungry that, you know what, I'm going to dump the rest of it into my bowl. And one kid got angry, and he was hungry as I was, jumped up onto me, latched onto me, and bit me.
Wow.
I still have a 2-inch bite mark on the right side of my chest today from that memory.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I bled everywhere. I was crying. I don't know who helped me, but man, that was a traumatic experience. That's something I will never forget. And I still have a 2-inch bite mark on the right side of my chest today.
Yeah, no, I see it, honey. I see it, and also, it's still very, emotional for a lot of people to talk about it. But for those of our listeners who may not be familiar with Cambodian history, modern history anyway, between 1975 to 1979.
Since your study was in Asian American studies and Asia Pacific, please share some details regarding that.
Well, I think, I think for me, quite honestly, a lot of learning about our Cambodian history wasn't through formal education here in the United States, unfortunately. I remember as a child in world history, there is a section on the Vietnam War, but quite honestly, it was just kind of like mentioned, and then you kind of just gloss over it. But I think for myself, it was a self journey of learning about Cambodian history. And it started actually when I was doing my undergraduate studies at San Francisco State University. Go Gators, at the College of Ethnic Studies. And, I really found a taking to Asian American studies. But when you look at Asian American studies, dominantly are kind of the more populated Asian American communities here. And so I was at San Francisco State and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm learning amazing facts about Chinese American history, Japanese American history, even, Vietnamese American, Korean American. And then I was like feeling this need of like, okay, well, where is it mentioned about, the Cambodian history? And honestly, honey, I had to really teach myself. And so I would go to the library and I would find books about the civilization of Angkor. I would find books about Pol Pot, Brother Number One. And I read books like, First They Killed My Father. And
That's a great book, by the way.
when
I
Broken
love that
Glass
book.
Floats.
Yes. Mhm.
And so I just went on this journey of buying or renting or at the time checking out from the library various books about Cambodian history. And then a very renowned historian, David Chandler, I read so many of his books. And so for me, most of my learning was also from my father, hearing stories from him, just as a man living through that era of the 1960s and 1970s. But yeah, I mean, Cambodia was thrown into this terrible civil war, 1975, 1979. The Khmer Rouge regime rolled into Phnom Penh April 17th, 1975, and started their journey of just cleansing the country, as they said, of anything Western, of imperialistic type of ideologies, and then basically evacuated every single resident from Phnom Penh. My entire family, along with other Phnom Penh residents. If you imagine an entire city like San Francisco being asked to like go to Stockton or Modesto and work in the farms, and they just believed in this crazy idea of it was just like totalitarianism, and just this. They wanted to create this crazy agrarian utopia that that they had read about. And you know this, right, honey? I mean, they were Cambodians who were the most educated scholars who got basically a chance to study in France. And then in France, they fell in love with Karl Marx and Marxism and communism, and then came back, like literally, I think in like the early 60s, I want to say, and formed, a communist party. But you, very emotionally sharing your childhood, you were born into that very hostile political environment in Cambodia at the time.
You were mentioning that we all had to pick up and leave, and at the time my family already lived in a small village in Battambang province, right? But for me, it just you were talking about people having to move from the capital and all the way to the different villages. Well, for our family, we already lived in a village and we had to move. And I was, like I said, I live in a little shack with 4 stilts above ground, no running water, no electricity, no food. I, went to bed hungry every night. But I remember at the age of almost 7 years old, in fact, I guess that's where you were born and into the camps later. But at the age of 7, we left Cambodia and we walked, I don't know for how many days, but people were getting shot and maimed. Cambodian people were carrying every belonging. All the kids were crying, were the dead bodies and all over the place. Where I had to step on as a child in order to continue a journey to Thailand. I remember all that. And then, in 1979, we entered into, actually before we got into Thailand, we stopped and stayed on a mountaintop with thousands of other refugees where everybody were, in famine mode. and there was no bathroom where everybody went to the
Yeah.
bathroom everywhere. Everybody had ringworms or
Yeah.
worms
Yeah.
from their stomach, so it was just crazy. And I remember staying there for several days and getting lost because I did something wrong. My mom chased me, ended up living with some military people for several days
Oh my
before
gosh.
they found my parents again.
Yeah.
And then after they found me, then we walked into Thailand, unknowingly that we could have gotten shot on the spot if we get caught crossing the borders. But we got in and registered ourselves into the United Nations camps. We lived there for 4 years and end up given permission to come to the United States through a church sponsor, and then end up going to the Philippines for 9 months. Now, by this time, I was already 9 years old after 4 years in Thailand. 9.5 years old, I lived in the Philippines for 9 months and lived in a tropical forest for 9 months, and then finally came to the United States in 1983. Didn't speak a word of English. There were just so many things that happened, so many firsts, and I could share a few of those firsts with you in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think so. Again, I think we both started off in life very differently. I would have to say in a little bit, just because I think for you were born in Cambodia at such a time of conflict, and so
1972.
you grew
at
up
the beginning.
You were probably 3 years old when the Khmer Rouge launched their genocide. So I can only imagine as a toddler, as a young child, when you're starting your early stage child development, you know what I mean, to be brought up like not in a safe and secure environment where like your basic needs were barely met, right, honey? I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean,
I was just hungry, and I remember my mother would tell me at the age of 3.5 years old that the Communist Party, the Khmer Rouge regime, would pass out the food. And at the age of 3.5 years old, she said, by the time they passed out all this food, I've already stolen enough for the family. That's what I had to do at the age of 3.5 years old. That's crazy.
Well, it's funny to think about that, because when we think about like our grandson, Caden, who's 5, and you think about like just the abundance of what we provide for him, even just like food, security of food, shelter, safety, things like that. So I feel like, a lot of our fellow Cambodian-Americans, especially your generation that grew up as a young child, like I feel like there is still a lot of the childhood trauma that is often kind of like shoved under the rug. And I think sometimes also when you're in survival mode, you just want to get through the next day. And so you don't really have time to stop and think about like, why do I have this like scarcity mindset, right? And you and I talk about this on a daily basis, is that as a toddler, when you're supposed to be like, being nourished and playing with Legos, like you don't have
reading
that,
books.
right? And then instead,
never got the chance to go to school. I only got to go to school for like 9 months, maybe a year at most, the first 10.5 years of my life, which is crazy, right? So we were playing with condoms as balloons in Thailand.
But that's your child imagination. But, I've been learning a lot about just, childhood trauma, and then how does that play into who we become as older children, right? And so for me, I have to say, I wasn't born into that chaos. I wasn't born during the genocide. I was actually born after the genocide, when my parents had already made it out alive, which in itself is a crazy feat, right? Like my mom was pregnant with me, and just like you, honey, like they were leaving.
So you were made in Thailand, is that what you're saying?
I don't know where I was made. I don't know. I think I was made somewhere in Cambodia. I was made in Cambodia. I should get a shirt that says "Made in Cambodia." But I think even just my being in the womb and experiencing a lot of like the difficulties and maybe the trauma that my mom went through, and maybe I don't know. I always think about like, does a fetus absorb some of that? I don't know. But for me, I think, I was born in the refugee camp, Khao Dang refugee camp, and I was born there in 1980.
Which is the first camp that I entered at the age of 7 years old in 1979.
Yeah. But I also feel like it's just your luck of the draw. Honestly, it's like I could have been born, right? I mean, I could have been born at Battambang.
Yep.
I could have been born in like a Khmer Rouge labor camp, but instead for some reason, I was born later in Khao Dang, and 10 days after I was born, my parents got a notification that we were being sponsored to Seattle, Washington. And for our family, it was a little bit unique because my father had served in the Cambodian National Police Force, in the 60s, and 70s. My father was born in 1933.
Wow.
He grew up in Cambodia during the 1940s and under that last era of like French
Colonization.
the French colonization, as we now call it, but Cambodia was a French protectorate, right? And so my father, you can imagine, grew up in the 40s as a little boy, and then as he became a working adult, as a man, he was 1950s, 1960s, and he served his country, and he often provided security detail for the royal family at the time, and the Prince Norodom Sihanouk. And every time he had a delegation, my father would be part of the security detail, and so he got a chance to really travel around Cambodia as a young officer. And so for him, it was really different. And I think one of his I don't know, I think he was like a commander, a lieutenant, or one of his superiors made it out to Seattle as part of the U.S. Embassy's evacuation in Phnom Penh, 1975. Mm-hmm. Basically, if you were a diplomat or if you were part of a high-ranking, I don't know, maybe So anyway, he and his family made it to Seattle, and then there I found out that he started supporting a lot of Southeast Asian refugees, mainly Cambodian refugee families. And he literally just passed away like last year.
Yeah, so sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, we came. It was just myself. I mean, I was a newborn. My father used to tell me stories of like they were switching me from my mom's breast milk to like some like infant formula, and I guess as a newborn I wasn't used to it, and so my dad tells me this story. Sorry, it's kind of gross, but he said that when he arrived in Seattle, like in America, he said I had like pooped on his pants. And he's like, I arrived in America with like your poop stained all over my new pants that were donated. So anyway, that was, yeah.
So sorry, you're a little shit then, huh? Okay, I got it.
So,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that I don't have memories as you do, honey.
Well,
for me, it's
speaking
just,
of which, so let me, I would love to just share a little bit about some of my first experience, in America. Speaking of which, I came to Tempe, Arizona on July 7th, 1983. But when I first arrived in America, that in itself is a long road. But, of course, I came from the Philippines. I went from the Marong Bataan Island to Manila, but even that trek was a crazy trek in itself because of like a 3-4 hour bus ride that most of us had never been on the bus before in the middle of summer in a tropical forest, and then the roads were windy and the cliffs were deep, and people got sick all over the bus, and then, like as the bus was twist and turn, so that the vomit on the bus was kind of crazy. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And then even when we got to Manila, they put us in a former prison camp overnight where we all slept and bathed and showered before we got on a plane the next day to come to America. But before we came to America, we ended up in Tokyo, Japan to refuel, and we left after a couple hours. Our plane lost an engine, according to my father. We had to come back. That's when they bust us into the hotels, which none of us had ever been in a hotel before.
Oh my gosh.
And people were running to mirrors, saw an escalator for the first time. It was just crazy experience. In fact, I remember being in a hotel room when the phone rang, and all my siblings and I ran and hid because we didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
We saw a TV for the first time. We didn't know how to turn it on. My aunt turned on hot water. This is the first time we ever had hot water, running water.
Yeah.
And she burnt herself because we didn't know how to use, the knobs, right? Those are some of our early experience. And then, a few hours later, we end up in San Francisco, California, where we got processed in the immigration processing center.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that. And, we go through the immigration. And now, mind you, I was 10 and a half years old at this time, right?
Wow.
So I remember the first gift that America gave us was a jacket with the 3 stripes on the sleeves, with the fake fur at the neck, and the fake fur at the sleeves, and I'm like, wow, this is like the greatest gift I've ever received since I've been in the United States of America.
You're styling back
I was styling. But after we got processed, we all had to leave San Francisco and through our destination where our sponsor was. Ours was in Tempe, Arizona.
Oh my gosh.
We arrived there. It was 118 degrees. We were still so damn proud of wearing that jacket at 118 degrees.
You were rocking
this
faux fur.
And then they put us in the car, with the AC, of course, and we came to our sponsor's home. And that night, I'll never forget as well, because that's the first time that we're in a home that's, well, first of all, a car that's air conditioned, a home that's air conditioned, and they fed us an entire chicken.
Wow.
See, in a refugee camps, they give you a little bit of ration, and you have to kind of ration it. So with the kitchen, you have to cut it like in 3 different pieces, and then you can make soup, whatever, but you have to save it for several days. But this is the first time that our family had a whole entire full chicken to ourselves.
Wow.
And this is the first time we slept indoor. This is the first time we had a pillow. This is the first time we had mattresses, so it's pretty cool. But there's some of my first, by the way. So I remember of course, the first chicken, the first picnic. My siblings and I went to our first church picnic, and they, of course, they clothed us and all that, right? But we ate so much that literally we sat at the benches with our mouths open, breathing hard from it, because we literally ate all the way up to our necks.
In Khmer, it's called hall.
Yeah.
Right? Like you were like so hall, like
we
were, you couldn't breathe.
Like literally, we couldn't barely
That's
breathe.
So funny.
But our first grocery store, I almost cried because I'm like, oh my gosh, you saw these fruits and vegetables and meat and canned food and everything else. I'm like, wow, where the heck was this?
Oh yeah, it's like an abundance, right? It's like heaven. It's funny, right? You remind me of like my grandmother who actually came with us, my father's mom, and I'll never forget it. My mom still has it. It's a photo of her, of grandma, standing in front of a refrigerator, and it looked like one of those like refrigerators from the 1970s. But grandma had all like the freezer door open. I don't know. I don't think I've ever showed you that photo, honey. But it's so. It's so iconic for us because here's grandma, and she's like standing with like this photo of like the refrigerator full, and then the doors are open.
And we still, speaking of photos, we still have photos of my family taking our first photo during the first week of America, still at 118 degrees with that jacket on.
Rocking your jackets because you were so proud. You were so proud to have it. But
and I still remember like 6 days after we lived with our sponsor, they found us our first apartment complex, 2-bedroom and 1 bath. In the okay neighborhood of Tempe, Arizona. But yet. That's when we met our neighbors who happened to be Cambodian. They had a pink bicycle with 1 pedal. That's when I learned how to ride that bicycle, and a bigger bicycle the week after. And then when I started dumpster diving for aluminum cans a week later. So there's just so many firsts like that. That really, when you think about it, like, oh my God, 1, you didn't speak the language. 2, you didn't know the culture. 3, you don't have any money, and you have to learn how to make this. But I got to tell you, we made a lot of money from dumpster diving. My older sister and I would take my older sister and I on the back of a bicycle at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we would go to the dumpsters, and I would make my older sister jump in while I'm collecting the cans from her. But once we get the cans home, I would make my siblings line them all up in the backyard, get a scoop of the red clay from the backyard, and dump each one into the cans. And then I would spray water in them, and I would crush them so to be a lot heavier when I turn them in. That's how we made them first American dollar.
How did you figure that out as a kid? Like, did you see an adult doing that?
I don't know, but I knew that we were going to weigh it in order to get, because the cans are pretty light, in order to weigh it to make as much money as possible. That's what we had to do. So
I'm just curious. I think back because I've heard that story so many times from you, honey. I'm thinking like, did the attendant just not figure it out? Like. Oh yeah, like this kid's like bag of cans is like way heavier than like the other people. Like, did it not register? Or, So you never. I mean, no, they never questioned it, right?
They didn't question because they didn't know, because it was in a bag, so no one knew. So anyhow, that's what we first made our first American dollar. So those are some of my first experience.
Yeah. It sounds like you built a lot of strength through your struggles, and I feel like that is going to be a common theme that we're going to continue to explore as part of our podcast. But, more specifically, I know you faced a ton of challenges. Do you have a specific story that maybe you want to share with everyone? What was like a moment of strength or maybe even hope, at this time for you? And then maybe how did you learn about being resilient and adapting to change?
Yeah, so that's a great topic, but I think what comes to mind for me on that one, it would be the many pivotal moments of my life. I'm going to share one with you, how I became a police officer. So at the age of 16 and a half years old, I wanted to become a police officer. Now, mind you, I've only been in the United States 5.5 years, maybe 6 years at that time. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I become a police officer? The first thing is obviously to get my green card done. So to get the green card, and I had my birthday change. And that in itself is a long story, but the short story is I got my birthday moved up by 4 years through immigration with the report card, and I could share that story later. But to that point, I wanted to become a police officer at the age of 17 years old. And it took me 4 long years to become a police officer. The reason why is because I couldn't pass the written test in order to get in the police academy. And I tried everything. I mean, literally 4 years. Well, first of all, I didn't know what a thesaurus was, so I never had a book. So first of all, when you take a police written test, they have spelling, they have vocabularies, they have sentence structure. From someone who's learning English from scratch, being only your 7th year in the United States of America, that's really, really, really hard. Idioms and antonyms and synonyms, I didn't know any of those things. I didn't know what a thesaurus was. So I had to figure it out. I didn't know there was Barnes and Noble. There's sample police books, tests that you could take. I didn't even know that. So I just had to figure it out. So I said, okay, what are some of the things I had to do? So I had to apply for the police cadet. So I became a police cadet for the city of Stockton. Then I said, okay, well, I got to take the test in order to pass it. So I start taking one, failed miserably. Start taking 2, failed miserably. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I said, okay, well, the more I take, the better it's going to be. So I sign up in pretty much every city in Northern California to go take the written test. So mind you, the time, right, the drive there, city of Santa Cruz, city of Pleasant, city of Livermore, Antioch PD, Sacramento, you name it, California Highway Patrol, you name that, I went everywhere just to take the test. But here's what I learned after taking a few that I failed. So what I did was I took 2 pieces of paper with me and a pencil. And I'm always, at the test, they give you about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours, I believe, to take the test. I'm always the last one to turn in. The reason why is because I didn't know how else to do it. I just sat there once I finished the last 45 minutes or an hour that I have left. I just sat there and studied. I'm the last one to turn it in. So when I study these tests, once I start studying, I notice a similar patterns. I mean, the vocabularies are similar. The kind of words, the kind of verbiage, the kind of sentence structure they use. So I start studying those things. Then what I do is I study, especially the vocabulary, the antonyms and synonyms that I didn't know. So I try to memorize as much as I could. So once I turn it in, I run outside. I have my 2 pieces of paper. I go to the bathroom. I start writing everything I could remember about the test. And I start doing that again and again and again and again. And finally, on my 4th year, I was able to pass the test at the age of 21 by 3 points.
Oh my gosh.
By 3 points. And now you have to...
So close.
Now, by this time, I go, okay, what else I have to do? So I became a police cadet. Okay. Then I go, you know what's the next step in order to become a police officer? I took the Reserve Academy, Police Academy. Okay. And then I became a reserve officer for the city of Stockton. I applied, I got promoted from a cadet to a reserve officer. So that got me into the police work a little bit. And then I got through the academy. Once I got through the academy, I remember English is still a challenge for me, but I was really good at physical training. In fact, I graduated we started with 67. We graduated 47 people. I was number 3 I was number 17 academically. I was number 2 in physical training. I was 5'6", 128 pounds at a time, but I was solid. I was so fast. I did 97 push-ups in a minute, 88 sit in a minute. That's crazy back then. I bench pressed almost twice my body weights. I was really, really strong. But right before I graduate, I got accused. I got in a fight with someone while I was in the police academy during a basketball game. This guy beat the heck out of me. A couple of weeks later, his house got shot at. My windows got broken, and we live in the same neighborhood. And now, remember, this time I was already a reserve police officer. The police officer I worked with thought I was involved in a drive-by shooting.
I mean, yeah.
They initiated an internal affair investigations, and my gun and badge was taken away from me for 6.5 months. I asked to take the lie detector test from the get-go. They didn't believe me. So once I started taking a test in other cities, when I passed the test, I went through the lie detector test regarding the shooting. I was cleared. Stockton PD looked at the test results, my lie detector test and my psychological test that I passed, cleared me and gave my gun and badge back.
Wow, thank goodness.
On December 4th, 1995, 6 months later, after I received my gun and badge back, Livermore hired me. That changed my life.
Wow. It could have gone any way, but I mean...
Think about it. It could have changed my whole trajectory of my life. I could have been in jail.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, I guess it's...
But I knew that I was innocent. I knew that I had nothing to do with the drive-by shooting. I had nothing to do with that. I knew that because of that, I kept taking tests in other places, hoping that someone would believe me and gave me that chance.
So I guess going back to that, this is again like, why would, I don't know, maybe because men, are very testosterone driven, but like, why fight over a basketball game? I'm just curious. Like, I mean, I've heard that story from you so many times, but like, what sparked a fight over a silly basketball game?
Because I was kicking his ass. He couldn't handle it. But usually you still see that going on in the NBA and in sports and in basketball at college and in high school and everywhere. But it's just something that happened in the heat of the moment.
Was he another like Khmer guy?
Another Khmer guy, yeah.
Do you still see him, or have you seen him?
I have not seen him in years, so I don't know what happened.
No, it's just interesting because like, I'm thinking like, wow, like you have to be pretty angry or pretty upset to like, it's just a basketball game. But again, like I said, maybe, I mean, for me, I just don't understand. But it's funny how that was such a challenging moment, because if you were never cleared of your name, like if, let's say, the polygraph exam that you took, what if that wasn't available? And this is like the 1990s, so I'm sure the technology wasn't as advanced as it is now, probably, right?
This is, a 21-year-old who lived in the worst of neighborhood, the ghetto of Stockton, right?
Yeah.
Who would they, I mean, I thought the officers I worked with that came to my house and searched my home, that when I gave them permission to search the house, that I thought they would believe me, but they didn't.
Well,
which is kind of crazy. But then again, life without challenges is just a life. Life with challenges and allow you to power through, and I knew that I was gonna power through. I knew I was gonna pass, but I knew that it's gonna take a little bit of time. Mind you, I was 21 years old, right?
Yeah.
But it did, and it resolved itself. And on December 4th, 1995, when Livermore PD hired me as a police officer at the age of 22 years old, coming from the broken household, coming from the worst of neighborhood, and end up in Livermore. That changed my whole trajectory of my life and the life of my family thereafter. So
no, absolutely.
It's been an amazing experience, actually. Yeah.
No, that's really inspiring, honey. And I think, that strength through struggle, I grew up in Stockton as well, just like you.
Yes. But we never met.
We never met. You are 8 years older, so we wouldn't have crossed each other in high school. But
I would have hollered back then.
Yeah, I know. Like, he's got an older guy. Weird. But yeah, no, I remember growing up in Stockton in the 1990s, and I remember same struggles, I guess, in the sense of just the environment that we grew up in.
Yeah, a lot of my friends end up in prison or gone into gangs and whatnot. Yeah.
And I think for our listeners who aren't familiar with Stockton, California, it is a little town. Well, I shouldn't say little, actually, it's a large city.
400+ thousand
Yeah,
people.
in Central Valley, but it became the seat of secondary immigration for a lot of Cambodian refugees. So my family, we actually did a secondary immigration to Stockton in 1985.
That's
And
right.
19,
And that's
yeah.
because I'm not sure which president, but they signed an agreement with the city of Stockton to allow a lot of immigrants to be placed there.
You
And
know,
that's,
I don't know. We'll have to look into that.
yeah.
But I think for my father, Stockton called out to us because, number one, of climate. Secondly, because of the Cambodian-American community there. And thirdly, of course, why do immigrants migrate to another city? Economic opportunity. And so my parents, we actually moved from Texas to Stockton. By that time, my parents had three of us by that time. No, I'm sorry. They only had two of us. It was just me and my brother, Saparith. And then my youngest brother, Peter, was actually born in Stockton. But I grew up in the 90s. I grew up surrounded by just, being teenagers at that era of like gangster rap. And we remember like that's when like Snoop Dogg and Dr.
Short.
Dre, Too Short, West Coast hip hop, Notorious B.I.G. That was like the time of, when we grew up, like R&B, like TLC,
Spring
Salt
Love.
and Pepper.
Remember Spring Love?
Yeah, Spring Love. I think that was your generation. Stevie B, a little bit of that.
Yep.
But for us, we were growing up as like the 1.5. So different from you. I went to kindergarten here in the U.S. So for me, I arrived 5 months old. Struggles. I'm sure my parents probably had more struggles. I think for me, I don't remember a lot of struggles until I probably went to school. Just things like getting bullied, being obviously Southeast Asian, being Cambodian. I think this was the 80s and 90s. And so, yeah, there was a lot of racism, let's be real. And there was a lot of bullying. And I was the only Cambodian kid on the school bus at the time. My parents had moved into, we went to Lincoln Unified School District. And I got my hair pulled. I got my homework taken away. I got beat up for my snacks on the school bus. And then finally one day my dad was like, And so he got off work early and then he stood at the bus stop and he basically threatened to
beat the shit out of the kids.
threatened to beat the kids if they ever laid hands on me. And then after that, of course, the kids never bothered me. And then my dad got called into the principal's office and said, Mr. Mao, you can't be like threatening little kids. I know they're like, harming your daughter, but you got to let the school know. So anyway, I think our parents, coming from surviving a genocide and seeing war and, coming to America was all about survival. But I think for me, my struggles was just getting through kindergarten through high school, growing up in Stockton. I found my place in, actually in academics. I found where I belonged was really just immersing myself in academics. I was involved in student government, the Lincoln High School Khmer Student Club. I just found myself in that, just immersing myself with school.
I think that's
little
what saved me as well, is that, even my early years, I remember going to my third grade class, Mrs. Charlie Young, whom I still speak to today. And went to
you often
Nightingale
talk
School in
about
Stockton.
her. Yeah.
And, I remember winning my first spelling contest in my first year. I won my first math contest, and I won one I'm very, very proud of is the handwriting contest. I love cursive writing, and I just almost a perfectionist when I was younger. And I thought that the school did me wonders, and I did really, really well in school. And in fact, one of the biggest struggles was that when you go home, the learning stopped because your parents don't speak didn't speak any English. So how can you get help? So one of the things that I did was I stole a dictionary. I still have to.
You borrowed it.
I borrowed it. Stole it. Yeah. Statute of limitations is over, so I could talk about
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Yeah.
I borrowed it. Stole it.
And all dictionaries
thank you,
are
Mrs.
online
Charlie
now.
Young, for letting me have for letting me that dictionary. I still have today, which is one of the most prized possessions of my life when I look back at that age in 1984.
Aren't you glad dictionaries are all online now?
Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah, absolutely.
Kids are like, what's a dictionary?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you and I both, and of course we'd love to share more about these like growing up stories, but I think resilience is actually there's no choice. I mean, I think you just have to be resilient, or you just have to survive. So I think, if you look at those experiences, how do you see your life? Like, now that we take these lessons, like, let's carry it forward. So how do you see these lessons, helping you to move forward in your, can I say your 50s?
Yeah, 52.
Your golden years.
My golden years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got my AARP card.
Yeah, that's
recently,
right.
so
He
it's pretty
could give
cool.
us he could give us discounts now.
But no, the lesson is that one, I think that you just got to know that life is very, very hard. It's difficult no matter who, when, where, why. It doesn't matter. It's going to be difficult. It's never going to be a straight line. But what happened to me was that there's so many other things that happened to me was that I've gone through so much struggles and I've gone through so many things. There's just so many things I could share. But what it did to me was it took away all my fears.
Yeah, it made you fearless.
It make you. I just knew that because I've gone through so much, but I also conquered so many obstacles that it took away all my fears. So it allowed me to live my life in a way I wanted. There's nothing that I can't do. I still feel that way today. There's nothing I can't do. For example, when I was a police officer in my 8th year, raising two boys at the age of 7 and 8, I had full custody of my boys. I was a police officer, full-time, working nights. So I worked as a full-time police officer, full-time father, volunteered myself in the community. I went to night school at St. Mary's College, and I went through a 19-month program after I received my AA degree from San Joaquin Delta College, and I got my degree. So even though I was a full-time father, full-time police officer, volunteer in the community, and was a basketball coach, a soccer coach, and all that, I still went to night school, and I knew I was gonna get my degree. I became number 2 in my class, and that changed the trajectory of my life in so many other ways. We'll get into that. I was asked one time to do Dancing with the Stars on a local level.
Yeah, I saw those pictures.
So I didn't know how to dance. I had 2 left feet, so. They said, hey, you're going to get partnered with a professional dancer for 5 days. And on day 6, you got to perform in front of a live audience, a sold out crowd at the Bankhead Theater in Livermore, 508 seats. I said, well, that sounds kind of fun, but nervous at the same time. And I did it. I did a John Travolta routine, and I have pictures to prove it. And I did that. And then the best thing, the last thing I want to share, the third example was that I ran for mayor twice, and almost 2 years ago, I lost an election by 2,091 votes.
Yeah, it was really close, yeah.
Now think about that. To some people, it's just about winning and losing. To me, it wasn't about that. It was about the fear of taking away that fear and say, you know what else can you do to challenge yourself to be better?
Yeah.
You got to do things that are uncomfortable. You got to do things that you've never done, because if you really want to grow, that's what you have to do. Forget the fear. Just step into it. No matter how difficult it is, you'll do it. And that's what happened to me. So still today, I take that attitude with me everywhere I go, that there isn't anything that I'm not capable of, I'm not willing to do, because I know I can no matter what it is. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I'm so excited for you to share a little bit more in depth, through our later episodes of just how did you do that? And
Run for those,
well, that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a campaign wife,
Yeah.
which I was not expecting. That was really interesting. But I think when we look back at kind of the purpose of starting our podcast, it's not to be like, oh, look at us, look at me. I don't need that. I don't need outside validation.
But you have to be, first of all, you have to be comfortable in your own skin. I think we both are comfortable with our own skin, who we are.
But it comes with experience, and it
That's
comes
right.
with maturity.
That's right.
But what I was gonna say was that the purpose of Love, Listings, and Legacy, it's not to be like, oh, let's sing our accolades and pat ourselves on the shoulder. No, because to me, the external validation does not define my worth.
That's right.
So if we can share with other people, maybe it's like, hey, how do I be more courageous? How do I shift my mindset? How do I do this, right? I really hope that what you can bring to this endeavor and this podcast, I hope that this is your way of giving back, of service, because let's face it, one day we're not going to be here, but hopefully the internet and YouTube and all these platforms are going to remain. And I think for me, that is the biggest part about embarking on this journey of legacy. When you talk about legacy, it's the people that you impact that you'll probably never meet, or the people that you impact after you're gone, right? So
yeah. Part of it, the inspiration for me is that when I think about it, for me is like what makes me happiest today, for example, is that I could do an email introduction or I can make a call on someone's behalf, right? But I'm hoping that some of the lessons I've learned, no matter how difficult they're, the people that hear our stories, no matter how difficult their lives may be, that there's a glimpse of hope.
yeah.
We came from nothing and we built what we have. It's not like not that we have a lot. We have enough just to be comfortable in what we do. We pay our bills every day just like everybody else.
Well, yeah.
And we just love the life that we have is because we're balanced in our family much more so than ever. We're balanced in our work. We're balanced in our community work. And that's what it's all about. We hope that it's rather than just looking at the accomplishment, but rather trying to be a better person, a collective person, a balanced person as a result.
All right. Well, I feel like our journey on this podcast is just beginning. So we've got so much more to share, but any kind of last words before we wrap up?
No, I just want to, this is exciting for our first one. Just want to thank thank you for the opportunity. I think it's been a great conversation, I hope. And that I hope that it resonate with the people in our audience, that they'll begin to hear a little bit more about us and what we like to do. And I'm hoping that we'll inspire them and share with them some of the wisdom and lessons that we've learned, and hopefully that make it better for their lives as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to our listeners, because when you invite us into your home and on your walks or whether you're on your drive, thank you so much. Yeah, it means a lot to us. And we really do hope that our story resonates with you in some sort of way, any of the topics that we bring up. And of course, we'd love feedback on any other topics you'd like to hear. But again, we are embarking on this exciting journey, and you can follow us on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, maybe TikTok. And definitely on the podcast side, we'll be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Thank you for joining us today.
Great.
It's been great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, honey.
Congrats
I appreciate
on the
it.
first session.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you for joining Love, Listings, and Legacy this week. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Join us next time as we continue to navigate the path from adversity to success, one property and one purpose-driven decision at a time. Thanks for listening.